You were nothing but a burden, my aunt sneered, her words slicing through the air like knives sharpened on resentment. And now finally you'll pay me back. The courtroom hushed, all eyes flicking between her and me. She wasn't trembling. No, she was steady, rehearsed, as if she'd been waiting years for this performance. And there I was, the orphan she had raised, clutching my hands together so tightly my knuckles burned. Hi everyone. My name is Marissa, I'm 27, and today I learned family can turn grief into a ledger. The judge adjusted his glasses as she slid forward a packet of papers. Her claim. Every page was neatly typed, itemized with chilling precision. Rent, food, clothing, transportation, school supplies. A total of $25,000. My existence reduced to a bill. My chest tightened as I stared at the numbers. Each line wasn't just an expense, it was a memory. The groceries she'd made me carry 3 blocks in the rain. The winter coat 2 sizes too big, because it's cheaper to grow into it. The lunches I ate alone at school, bread stale but counted as meals. Yes, she gave me those things. But not out of kindness. Out of obligation and greed. I remembered the way her laughter rang when she pawned my mom's necklace, the last thing I had of her, for quick cash. I remembered nights she locked her bedroom door while I lay awake in silence, wondering if love was something you had to earn. And now she sat here pretending she was my savior. The judge flipped through the stack, his voice even, almost bored. This is unusual. He tapped a page, looked up, and asked, "Where is the $260,000 in Social Security survivor benefits you collected on her behalf?" The room cracked open. Gasps filled the gallery. Even the stenographer's hands paused above the keys. My aunt froze, her lips parting, face draining pale. For the first time she looked small. I felt the air shift around me, heat rushing to my face. For years she made me believe I was a debt. In that single question the lie unraveled in front of everyone. The courtroom erupted. Whispers, stares, the sound of her empire collapsing. And deep inside me, beneath the fury and the hurt, one truth rose steady. This wasn't the end. It was the opening act. The sound inside that courtroom was like thunder rolling off the walls. Gasps, murmurs, the shuffle of papers as people leaned in closer. My aunt's polished act slipped in an instant. Her mouth opened, closed, then trembled like a cracked mask barely clinging to her face. I don't know what you mean," she stammered, her voice suddenly thin, stripped of its venom. But the judge didn't blink. He leaned back, calm yet unrelenting, his gavel tapping once against the wood for order. "Mrs. Caldwell, records show survivor benefits were issued every month after the passing of this young woman's mother. Roughly $260,000 in total. Do you deny receiving them?" The gallery rippled again. My breath caught. Hearing it spoken aloud, hearing someone finally acknowledge the truth, felt like chains cracking off my chest. My aunt gripped the edge of the table, her rings clinking against the wood. "That money was for her expenses," she spat, her voice climbing too high, panic woven through every syllable. "I raised her. I kept her alive." Alive. That word burned. I remembered nights of cold dinners where she'd eat steak while I got instant noodles. I remembered cleaning her house after school while she lounged with wine in hand. I remembered her locking away documents in that metal box she thought I never noticed. And now the lie bled out under fluorescent lights, her empire of control trembling. The judge's pen tapped against the paper, steady, measured. "Your claim asks for $25,000, he said slowly, his gaze piercing her. "Yet you collected more than 10 times that amount. Can you account for how those funds were spent?" The silence was suffocating. My aunt's face twisted, part fury, part desperation. Her mouth moved, but no words came. My pulse roared in my ears. For years she told me I owed her my life. And now, with every second she faltered, the truth was no longer my secret to swallow. It was public, undeniable, irreversible. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I didn't see power. I saw fear. The crowd leaned in, the weight of every eye crushing her. And in that moment I knew, this was only the beginning of her unraveling. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers. And her silence was the loudest sound of all. The judge's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Mrs. Caldwell, the court requires documentation. Where are the records showing how this $260,000 was spent on your niece?" My aunt's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. She shuffled the neatly bound claim she had presented, as though flipping those flimsy sheets might suddenly conjure missing receipts. Her diamond bracelet clinked against the folder, a cruel reminder of what that money had really bought. I sat frozen in my chair, every nerve lit like electricity. For years she'd made me feel small, indebted. But now her empire of manipulation was being dismantled in front of strangers. Judges, attorneys, reporters scribbling furiously at the back. "Your Honor," she began, her voice sharp, brittle, "those funds were absorbed into household costs. Heat, light, the mortgage." The judge lifted his hand. "Then produce proof. Bank statements. Ledgers. Anything to substantiate that claim." The room stilled again. Even the hum of the overhead lights felt louder. My aunt faltered, her mouth opening then shutting, her eyes darting toward me with venom. The kind of look that once froze me as a child. Silent threats that said, "Keep quiet or pay the price." But I didn't shrink this time. I held her gaze steady, letting every memory flood back. The nights I slept in a freezing attic while her son got a new gaming console. The day she sneered at me for asking for a yearbook photo because it was a waste of money. The moment she pocketed a check addressed to me and told me to stop being ungrateful. I leaned forward, my voice trembling but clear. "Your Honor, I never saw a cent of that money. Not for clothes, not for school supplies, not for food. If anything, I was treated like an expense she regretted." Gasps broke out again. The stenographer's keys clacked faster. The judge's eyes shifted from me to my aunt, and for the first time I felt the scale tip. My aunt's hand shook as she clutched her pearls. Her performance cracked wide open. And in that trembling silence I realized something. She wasn't just losing her case. She was losing her mask. The courtroom was no longer her stage. It was her undoing. The judge's stare lingered on my aunt, heavy enough to strip the polish right off her practiced smile. "Mrs. Caldwell, this court is not in the business of assumptions. If you claim financial sacrifice, you must prove it. Where are the records?" Her hands fumbled with the papers in front of her, the glossy manicure clicking against the table. She tried to speak, but her voice snagged, breaking in half. I don't have them here." A murmur spread through the courtroom like wildfire. Reporters shifted forward. My lawyer leaned closer to me, whispering, "She's cornered." I swallowed hard. For years I had carried the weight of her dominance, the way she twisted survival into chains. But now for the first time I saw her unravel in real time, each excuse fraying, each second exposing her. The judge's gavel tapped once. "Convenient." His tone cut sharper than any outburst. "Without documentation, your claim is speculative at best. This court deals with evidence, not memory." My aunt's eyes darted toward me, blazing. That look again, one she'd used countless times behind closed doors. The kind that promised retribution. But here in this room her glare carried no weight. She couldn't silence me anymore. Then came the voice from behind us. "Calm. Steady. Your Honor, if I may?" We all turned. It was Mrs. Dawson, our former neighbor. Her gray hair was tied back, her posture rigid with dignity. She clutched a folder of her own. "I lived next door for 15 years, she continued. "I saw what went on. That girl wore the same shoes for 3 winters. She babysat for my family when she should have been studying. And yet I recall new cars in their driveway. Vacations. Jury. I have photos, time-stamped." The gallery gasped again, louder this time. My aunt froze, her mask cracking, eyes darting between Mrs. Dawson and the judge. I felt a lump rise in my throat, tears threatening to break, but I held them back. "Not yet. Not here." The judge leaned forward, his voice calm, commanding. "Mrs. Dawson, approach." And as the neighbor handed over the folder, I realized something. The truth wasn't just mine to tell anymore. It had witnesses. My aunt's empire wasn't just crumbling. It was collapsing under the weight of every lie she thought would stay buried. The bailiff carried the folder from Mrs. Dawson to the judge's bench. The room hushed so deeply I could hear my own heartbeat. The judge slid on his glasses and opened the file, flipping through each page with deliberate care. His brow furrowed as photographs were revealed, suburban snapshots frozen in time. A glossy picture of my aunt's driveway, a brand new SUV parked proudly beside her husband's truck. Another image, my aunt on a beach chair, umbrella drink in hand, the date stamp blazing across the bottom corner. Receipts tucked in behind, jewelry store invoices, spa packages, weekend getaways. None of it spoke of sacrifice. All of it whispered indulgence. The judge lifted his eyes slowly, his gaze slicing across the room. Mrs. Caldwell, these photographs are dated during the period you claim you struggled to raise your niece. Can you explain how survivor benefits intended for her welfare translated into vacations and luxury goods? My aunt's lips parted, then clamped shut. Her face twisted, every ounce of control leaking away. Those were family expenses, she sputtered, her voice climbing, desperate. I deserved some relief after taking her in. Do you know what it cost me emotionally? Emotionally. That word echoed inside me like a cruel joke. I remembered sitting on Mrs. Dawson's porch after another screaming match, wiping tears I wasn't allowed to shed indoors. I remembered patching my own second-hand backpack with duct tape while my cousins flaunted new designer sneakers. Relief? My aunt had found relief. I had only found survival. The gallery stirred, whispers rising like a tide. Reporters' pens scratched faster, cameras clicked. My aunt's narrative, her perfect martyr act, was dissolving under fluorescent truth. The judge's gavel came down once, silencing the hum. This court will not tolerate misrepresentation. You collected government benefits under the pretense of providing for this young woman. Evidence suggests otherwise. And you dare demand more? The words struck like thunder. My aunt gripped the table as if it could anchor her, but I could see it. The collapse wasn't coming. It was already here. I inhaled slowly, steadying the tremor in my chest. For the first time I felt taller than her. Stronger. The courtroom wasn't just exposing her lies. It was rewriting mine. Because maybe I wasn't a burden after all. Maybe I was the evidence. My aunt's nails scraped across the polished wood of the table, desperate to hold on to control she no longer had. Her voice cracked as she lunged for one last shred of power. She's lying. That neighbor, she hated me. She's making this up to ruin me. But the judge didn't flinch. He held up a receipt, his voice steady as stone. This invoice is from a resort in Cancun, dated the same month you claim to have been falling behind on utility bills. Are you suggesting this document is fabricated? My aunt's throat worked, but no sound came. The room vibrated with tension, every pair of eyes locked on her unraveling. Her cheeks flamed red, her chest rose and fell too quickly, like a cornered animal gasping for air. I sat rigid, my palms damp, my breath uneven. For years I'd rehearsed moments like this in the quiet corners of my mind, imagining her lies laid bare. But now, watching it unfold, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like mourning for all the years I'd believed I was worth less than the money she pocketed. My lawyer rose slowly, his voice calm but cutting. Your Honor, if my client had truly been a financial burden, why did Mrs. Caldwell continue to collect benefits in her name until the very month she turned 18? Why not terminate guardianship? Why not return unneeded funds? The judge's gavel tapped once. He looked at my aunt, unblinking. Answer the question. Her lips quivered. Because she owed me. The words burst out wild, raw. I gave up my life for her. I deserved every cent. The gallery erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. A woman in the back shook her head, muttering, monster. I felt something inside me break, but not in weakness. In release. She had finally spoken the truth. Not the rehearsed version but the poisonous one that had always hung in the air of that house. The judge leaned forward, his tone final, unyielding. Mrs. Caldwell, what you deserved was accountability. And you will have it. The words struck like thunder. My aunt slumped back in her chair, her empire in ashes. And for the first time in my life I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. The air in the courtroom had shifted, thick, electric, heavy with truth. My aunt sat slouched in her chair, her hands trembling as if even her rings had become too heavy to bear. I watched her chest heave with shallow breaths, and for once, there was no performance left in her. Only exposure. The judge stacked the folder of evidence neatly before him, every motion deliberate, as if he wanted the gravity of each sound to etch itself into the record. He folded his hands. This court recognizes the intent behind Social Security survivor benefits. They are not a windfall. They are protection for the child left behind. Funds to provide a home, clothing, education, care. What I see here is not sacrifice. It is exploitation. Gasps rippled again, softer this time, almost reverent. People leaned forward, absorbing every syllable. My aunt finally lifted her head, her voice breaking. She doesn't understand. I was the only one there for her. Without me, she'd have had nothing. I rose slowly, my knees trembling but my voice clear. Nothing. My words echoed across the chamber. Nothing would have been kinder than being raised to believe I was a bill you resented. You didn't give me a home. You gave me a roof with strings attached. You didn't give me love. You gave me debt. The room held its breath. Even the reporters stopped scribbling. The judge's gavel struck once. Order. This is not a debate. It is a judgment. He paused, eyes locking with mine for just a heartbeat before turning back to her. Mrs. Caldwell, your claim for $25,000 is denied in full. The sound hit like a bell tolling. My aunt flinched as if the words themselves were shackles. But he wasn't finished. Furthermore, based on evidence presented, this court will be forwarding findings to the Social Security Administration for a full investigation into misuse of survivor benefits. The silence that followed was deafening, like the entire room inhaled and forgot to exhale. My aunt's mouth fell open, no sound coming out this time. Her empire wasn't just ruined, it was under fire from forces even she couldn't manipulate. And in that fragile, echoing quiet, I felt something stir inside me. Not victory. Not revenge. But release. For the first time in years I could breathe without guilt. The gavel's echo lingered in the air like a final heartbeat. My aunt sat motionless, her body slumped, her eyes glazed as though she had finally collided with a truth too large to outrun. The whispers in the courtroom rose and fell, a tide carrying her name out into the world she could no longer control. I sat still, my palms pressed against my knees. My body trembled, not from fear but from the weight of release. For years I had carried her shadow, convinced I was nothing more than an unpayable debt. But today, under these lights, beneath these vaulted ceilings, I was no longer her burden. I was my own. The judge's final words cut through the silence. This matter is closed. The gavel fell once more, sealing her fate. I stood, my legs weak but steady. My aunt's eyes darted to me, frantic, searching for the fear she used to wield like a weapon. But there was none. What she saw instead was distance. Freedom. As I walked toward the exit, the gallery parted. Reporters whispered, neighbors stared, but I kept my gaze forward. The heavy doors opened and the sunlight outside met me like an embrace. Warm. Blinding. Honest. For the first time in years I let myself breathe it in. Behind me, I knew investigations would unravel her lies thread by thread. Bank accounts audited. Assets questioned. Luxury stripped bare. Justice slow and deliberate, moving in ways my anger never could. But my revenge wasn't her punishment. It was my release. I thought of my mother then, her laugh, her touch, the way she used to say, "The truth always finds its way, Marissa." And I smiled through the sting in my eyes. He was right. It had found me, even here, even now. At the bottom of the courthouse steps I paused. The world felt wide again, full of doors I could finally open without someone else holding the key. My aunt's shadow no longer reached me. And as I walked into the sun, steady and unafraid, I realized something simple, something undeniable. She had tried to turn me into a debt. But I had become the proof.